Hi, this is Claudia Filas. I'm with the Center for Atlantic Studies in Washington, D.C., and I'm here today with two special guests who are going to walk us through an introduction of the Perseus website. So, Anna, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Anna Krohn. I work for the Perseus Digital Library at Tufts University, and I am a digital library analyst, but also a teaching fellow.
Great. And can you talk a little bit about the kind of projects you've been working on?
Sure. So in our teaching, I have been teaching a Greek literature and translation course wherein we are introducing students to Greek who do not know Greek and allowing them to uh, find the tools to get past translations and be able to figure out the Greek for themselves.
That's really fabulous. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
And Sarah, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, hello, I'm Sarah Scott, and I have taken part in the Heroes X project, and I'm now currently part of the Hour 25 project. So I'm in the stage of getting past translated texts and wanting to dip a toe into the Greek. So I think this is a really great opportunity to find out a little bit more about how to go about that.
So thank you so much, you both, for being here with us today and helping us do this video. And Anna, thanks so much. I hope you can take us through. I think this will be fun. So can you just walk us through the side of it and show us?
All right, let me bring up the Perseus homepage and we'll start from there. Okay, so what I have here is our homepage for the Perseus Digital Library. And again, we are based out of Tufts University and also have some colleagues at Leipzig University. So to begin, to find a text, you're going to want to go to this link here, collections/texts, and presumably you're going to be looking for a Greek or Latin text.
And for this exercise, we're going to assume we're looking for a Greek text today.
Yes. There we go. So the Greek and Latin texts are located under Greek and Roman materials. And this will bring up a list of documents arranged by author. So for this example, I'm going to go down and find Homer, who's here, and click on the name that brings a drop down of the works. And we are going to go to the Iliad in Greek. So here we have the main reading page, wherein we've got our Greek text, and then also a bunch of other things on either side and above. So there are a lot of very useful tools in this section. Let's see. First, I'll go through quick how to navigate around the texts. So there are a few different ways to do this. If you just want to step forward a section, you can use the blue arrows at the top and at the bottom of each piece of text. You can also see a table of contents for the entirety of the work. In this case, the Iliad is broken up into books and lines. Other texts have different structures. But this will all be illustrated in the table of contents, and it allows you to jump to any particular point.
And that table of contents will always be on the lower left-hand side, right?
Yes, it's always in the left sidebar.
Can you tell us about some of the resources over on the right? I'm looking
Sure.
at that English when I see English.
Yes, so we have, as well as the Greek text, two different English translations, and we're able to bring them up actually by clicking either the load, which will show you the English text side by side with the Greek text, or if you want to just look at the English or have that as your main text, you can click focus, which will shift you over. And then when you're on the English, you can also see the Greek in the side.
So I see. So when you changed focus, the Greek moved over into the margin on the right.
Yes.
Right.
And I'm going to go back to the Greek as the main text. And so when you are investigating Greek, say you want to look into this word meinin, all of the words in our Greek texts are hyperlinked to a definition, what we call our word study tool. It will provide you with the lemma or the dictionary head word that the form comes from, along with a simple definition. Sometimes these are not necessarily correct because they're pulled out automatically. I can show you an example of that later and how to get around that. But you will see here the form of the word that you clicked on, and next to it is an elaboration of that form, the morphology of it. Right. And if you don't necessarily know all of the terminology, at the beginning it does have a part of speech, which is, I think, useful for most people.
Right. Can I ask a quick question?
Sorry.
No, please go, Sarah, please.
I was going to just ask for clarification. So all of the Greek words are likely to have different endings to show whether they're the subject of the sentence or the object of the sentence, or if it's a verb, it would have a different ending depending on whether it's past or present, or whether it's what sort of person is doing, singular or plural, that kind of thing. So yes, you will expect to see different endings.
Yes, and those will all appear in this area. This head word will remain the same no matter what, because that is just the standard dictionary entry.
Could you can you take a second to talk about the different dictionaries that are available right there, and what they look like when you click on them?
Yes. So for Greek, we have actually 4 different dictionaries. One of them doesn't appear in this list. We have the Liddell, Scott and Jones, the Middle Little, which is a condensed version of Liddell, Scott and Jones, and the Auterith, which is a Homeric dictionary specifically. And then we also have Slater's dictionary, but that's geared towards the author Pindar. Right. The LSJ will give you the most detailed entries, and this is what it looks like. It will just load right below when you click on the link, and there is a lot of information here. Most of it is giving references for various forms, but you can, find the actual definition, which for Manus is wrath, and you get further clarification of wrath of the gods,
and so those references that we see, those are actually linked right to the texts that are available on Perseus. Is that correct?
Correct. For example, this is another instance of the word Manus. It doesn't look like it's highlighted here, but it does appear again in this portion.
That's great.
And then you can also see it in other places. Another way to find other instances of the word is this word frequency statistics portion down here. When you click on a word in a text, it will by default show you the statistics for that text. So you can see that the corpus or the work that it's pulling from is Homer's Iliad, that there are that many words in the actual text, and then Manus in its various forms appears 28 times. And to see where all of those 28 times are, you can click on the 28, and it will pull up a listing of all of the instances. And to see it in context, you can click on the book and card reference, and it will take you to it, and it will actually highlight where that word appears, which is very handy.
Very useful. Mm.
And now let's say you had a word that occurred maybe 100 times. I see you clicking that link up in the right-hand corner before that said more. Is that where you would keep going to get more if there were more than, let's say, 25 or so?
Yes. By default, when you get this elaboration of words in a text, it will condense it down to one entry, and then you have to click more to get the full for that particular author and work. Right. If you're looking for a word across works, so in multiple things, it would then list the other authors and works down here in a similar format, and you would have to expand them to see all of the examples.
Great, thank you.
Let's see. After the dictionaries, if you have a word that you know of that you want to search for, that's not associated with a particular text,
or maybe you don't know yet where it occurs, or
exactly.
you're reading another text and it occurs and you want to see where else it occurs.
You want to see where else it is. You can go to all search options. This appears at the top in the header of all of our pages, so it's nice and easy to find. And when we go there, we get a list of various search tools that include other various functionalities. The ones we're most interested in are the English to language lookup and the dictionary entry lookup, but also the word study tool. So these have three very different functions. English to language allows you to search for a particular word in English and find a dictionary definition in Greek or Latin, or I believe we have Arabic and Old Norse as well.
That's amazing, right? Yeah. So you're saying, let's say you're looking up maybe you want to look up any Greek dictionary entry that contains the word anger or something like that,
yes. Right? So if you do that and you search, you get a lot of entries.
Isn't that amazing? I love moments like that, because I always have this flash of, someone really spent a year or 6 months at one point doing their research project, and it was doing just what you just did in a click.
Yes, yeah. And the also nice thing about this is you can go to the further dictionary entry from this place to, get the full definition of the word, and you can also go straight to the dictionaries as opposed to the word study tool, which we saw earlier. You can also go straight to the listings of the words and where they appear in Aristophanes, Apollonius, Lucan, Aelian.
So now we see just what you're saying before about how it's going to be broken out by author, right?
Yes. But yeah, there aren't multiple examples in these, but yeah, you can see the multiple authors at least.
So I have a question about the last screen, but Sarah, do you have any questions at this point?
I think that's very clear. I'm just astounded at how many different kinds of anger there are in Greek.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
It's a beautiful moment. Okay, so can you ask Anna? Can you say a word about the difference between max instance and min instance? Is that anything we should be thinking about?
No.
Don't worry about that?
No, don't worry about it. The max instance is what you're interested in to actually get to the various appearances.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we just looked at this wonderful tool that allows us to go from English to Greek. What other tools were on that page?
So we'll go back to the search tools and take a look now at the dictionary entry lookup tool. With this, you can enter in parts of words, and it will take you to those the matches for dictionary head words. So to enter Greek into these dictionary entry lookup and word study tools, there is a handy guide up here in the right top of the site, and it also appears wherever there is a word study tool search box. Since we do not have Greek characters, and some Greek characters might potentially overlap with English letters, there are specific mappings for the non-intuitive characters such as eta, theta, omega, and all of that. It also gives you the option to add in diacritical marks, but it's not necessary.
Right. And so I can see a little example underneath the key, right? So that's the first line of the Iliad, and you can see how it's sort of getting translated into that beta code.
Yes. And it looks a little funny, but you get used to it after a while.
Great.
So this is where there are characters that appear in Greek that we don't have an English equivalent of.
Correct.
And you're using the example of eta, which is we've seen perhaps in with a letter E with a line across the top. And that would be that character, and you would enter that on our keyboards as a letter H, and it would map onto that eta character.
Right? And that's how you would search when you were typing in, quote unquote, in Greek. You're not going to type in Unicode Greek when you're searching on Perseus. You're going to type in this beta code. Great, thank you.
Yep. And to show you the dictionary entry lookup versus this word study tool, they have two very different uses. The dictionary entry lookup is there to search through the dictionary head words or the lemmas. You can do, the various search for parameters. You can do starting with, ending with, containing, that sort of thing. Let's see, I think at this point I'd be happy to answer any questions or do any clarification, because I believe I have explained at least fairly well the different search tools that we have.
Sarah, do you have any questions? I think it's beautiful. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, I think that's given a very good sense of all the different ways you can search and sort of start at different points and get into it in different ways. So, yeah, thank you very much. That's wonderful.
You're welcome.
So, Anna, if you want to just, you could turn off your screen sharing now, perhaps?
All right.
So we're so grateful. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise. It really means a lot. It makes a huge difference to have someone who's so familiar with the content and the website walk you through, because it can feel intimidating, right?
Yes, definitely, especially when you get those long dictionary entries that look like a bunch of gibberish because it's all abbreviations. But there is content there.
But everyone really sort of starts there, right? And so could you just maybe say a couple of words about the class that you're teaching and about why you're helping students sort of move beyond a translation? And you're using these exact tools, right?
Yes. We're using the Perseus Digital Library, and we're also using a tools developed by the Alpheus Project. They're partners of ours, and they developed some very neat tools. But back to the class, we wanted to do more than just a Greek literature and translation class, because there are frequently words and concepts that get translated into English that can't really be fully captured by the English language. And so this process of providing our students with projects that point out to them the differences and give them the ability to research these words and the differences between them and their English translations really helps to flesh out some cultural concepts that just haven't carried over into English. For example, the concept of menace. It's translated as anger, but it's not just anger, it's godly wrath. And if you look at the instances of it in the Iliad, I believe there are only 8. It's used to describe either Achilles or the gods. And so that definitely locates that word in a very specific context that otherwise would be completely lost in English.
And if other people are interested in learning more about this kind of cosmic anger that can be really a sanction, I would recommend actually a book by one of the people who we work with at the Center for Hellenic Studies. His name is Leonard Milner, and he wrote a book called The Anger of Achilles. It's on Menace in Greek epic. Sarah, did you have a question? Or did you want to say anything about our approach and about that whole process of looking at words in context?
That would fit very well with where we've come from the Heroes Project, where we were introduced to various concepts there, not just a one-to-one translation with an English word. And you were giving the example of anger, and we know that menace is this sort of cosmic anger, but there are other words for anger.
Yes.
We've got the same word in English, but there are lots of different Greek words for anger, and they would have a different meaning, a different context. And so it's going to be really interesting for us to be able to use these tools to look at what's the Greek word that's being used here, and where else is it being used, and what's the context where that's being used, as opposed to just another word for anger or whatever it might be we're looking at. So it's going to be really, really useful. And having those different ways to do the search is also going to be really, really helpful. It's a fantastic site. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you to the two of you. We're so appreciative of your time and the energy and care that you put into these projects and into your work and into making all this material accessible to as wide an audience as possible. So I know I benefited from that for years and years in between my undergraduate career and my graduate school. I would not be here if it weren't for Perseus, because it gave me access to text and to tools freely available. So I am a child of Perseus.
Yeah, I am too, long before I started working here.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I hope you'll come back and join us again.
Yes, I'd love to.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye. Bye-bye.